to the Your Pennsylvania Ancestors podcast. In this week's episode, I talk with Lou Bernard, who's fondly known as the county historian for Clinton County, Pennsylvania. This is Denise Allen. Lou works at the Ross Library in Lock Haven, Pennsylvania, and you'll find that that is the center for genealogical research and resources for anything that you want to look up in Clinton County having to do with your ancestors. Lou's going to tell us about what to expect as a first-time researcher and what records exactly the library has. And you definitely do not want to miss Lou's great stories from Clinton County's history. Have a question about how to research in Pennsylvania? Reach out and contact me through my website, Instagram, Facebook, or even Twitter, and ask me a question. All right, Lou Bernard, welcome to the podcast. I'm really super excited that you're joining me. Tell us about what you do at the Ross Library in Clinton County and sort of, I don't know, maybe what you love about the place because you've been there for so long.
Yeah, well, it's been 30 years next fall, and what I love about it there is a lot. There is such a fascinating, rich history up all along this branch of the Susquehanna River. So I've worked at the Ross Library 8 years this coming spring. The library was built in several jumps. The oldest part was the mayor's mansion. Mayor Robert Bridgens built the place in 1887. He passed away there, and his wife sold it to Annie Helen Bake Ross, who was, by all accounts, a wonderful, lovely woman, but, somewhat mildly reclusive. She was introverted. She would rather be at home reading a book. This carried over into her will in September of 1907 when she passed away on vacation in New Jersey of an undiagnosed appendicitis. She had left her home to the city on the condition it be turned into the public library. It was 3 years before the city council finally managed to put that into play there was a lot of debate on both sides. Some said yes, some said no. A lot of people were writing into the newspapers taking sides. Finally, they got it off the ground, and the library first opened. We're coming up on our 110th year. It opened Thanksgiving Day of 1910. Ever since then, the library has added on rooms and wings when space was needed. The first one was 1916. After that, there were wings added in the 50s, the 70s, and most recently, a small storage area tacked on around 2014.
Wow. So your role at the library, it sounds like you do a lot of the historian role.
Yes, I do. I used to work for the local historical society. Lost that job in 2012, but I went to the library where I more or less folded that into the description of adult services coordinator. Somebody has to run the historic archive, which is one of our big functions within the community. And that somebody these days is me. I am pretty much the known guy on the history, sort of the local history expert. In 2014, when Clinton County became 175 years old, there was a big festival planned. And simultaneously, and with, as far as I know, no coordination, all of a sudden, the mayor, the city councilman, the county commissioners all began referring to me as county historian as if it was a job title. So I kind of fell into the somewhat official role of county historian. Interestingly, my biggest hero in this area is Henry Wharton Shoemaker, who tracked down and wrote down a lot of local legends, neat stories and tales, folklore from the past.
Mm-hmm.
and he was Pennsylvania's first and only state folklorist, a job title made up specifically to use his talents. When people started calling me county historian, my first thought was, oh my God, I'm just like Henry Shoemaker.
Oh, that's fantastic. And now I have a new piece of trivia to add to my ever developing thing. I did not know Pennsylvania had a folklorist and even
Oh,
what his name
Shoemaker
was.
was amazing. He wrote down some fascinating stories. He's had his detractors. A lot of people have said he just made up these legends, but I've done a lot of research into the man, and I believe that he actually wrote down what he was told. There may have been some embellishment, but it wasn't on Shoemaker's part.
Interesting. So, where could someone listening find Shoemaker's folklores and tales?
Well, we have a full collection at the Ross Library. If you'll
Okay.
forgive the shameless plug, actually,
No.
you can get them on Amazon. A lot
Okay.
of his books have been reprinted by Penn State, and
Okay.
you can order them on Amazon, which I discovered one night when I'd had like one too many beers, and I got on Amazon and typed in Henry Wharton Shoemaker. I was hoping for a Shoemaker action figure, but there apparently isn't one of those yet. however, it came up with a whole line of his books.
Okay. I'm totally gonna look for them. I love
Well worth it. Some
stories.
really
Yeah.
neat stories from all over the state.
Yeah. Wonderful. I can't wait. Um, so can you give us a little bit more about what the Ross Library holds in terms of its holdings? I know you have some genealogical collections and you have a Pennsylvania room.
Yes, we do. I'm really proud of the Pennsylvania room. Um, in addition to all the usual stuff, we have an excellent children's library. We have the main stacks with the fiction, nonfiction, a fantastic graphic novel selection, which is also my department, by the way. But the historic and genealogical stuff, we are the best place in the county to come for this. The Pennsylvania room is one room that's set apart. It was originally Annie Hallenbake Ross's kitchen back during the mansion days. It's one room set apart for historic and genealogical research, though the truth is it's grown some, and these days it expands into the next room, which was originally Annie's living room. That's where my desk sits. We have a huge collection of historic and genealogical works, books, papers, all sorts of donated photographs. We have a huge archive.
So the library, that collection of genealogical and historical materials is available when the library's open, I assume.
Well, yes. Originally, got to give a shout out here to Isabel Welch Pons. Isabel was she was the longest lasting director the library ever had, running from 1942 to 1984. Great woman. She was incredible. She was the one who foresaw a need for the historic archive. She was the one who began keeping the newspapers and acquiring documents and so on. So she started the building blocks for, what I later am doing. So I'm really proud to be kind of following in her footsteps. The Pennsylvania room, the collection is named technically after her, the Isabel Welch Pons Pennsylvania room. The collection is open when the library is open. People are welcome to come right in. Newspapers on microfilm going back as far as 1813. We have every available book about the history of Clinton County, including most recently a book about Wayne Township, Clinton County, written by myself. It's called A Township Called Wayne, and it just was published this week.
Oh.
So, yeah, I got a copy for the library, added it in there. It's available for checkout and currently also on sale at the library.
Okay.
We have all the obituaries. We have the historic resource survey forms if you're looking into a property in the library. Anywhere in Clinton County you can find a property. We have over 100 years worth of city directories. Those are sort of a reverse phone book. You can check any address and kind of backtrace it to see who lived at that address in a certain year. We have the Sanborn maps, which most people aren't even aware of, but I love them. These beautiful old insurance maps. We have them from about 1901 to 1925, showing exactly where all the buildings were in town, and they're wonderful. They trace out every porch, every window. You can see them clearly on, every outline of a building. You can see what was added and when. Cemetery records, marriage records. When the courthouse can't store things, they just ship them right over to us.
Yeah, so that's good for people to know, especially if they're looking for some of those older records from when the county first formed. They might not be at the county courthouse, they'll be at the library.
Some of them will be, yes. Now,
Okay.
a lot of the time, the courthouse also kept copies on microfilm for themselves. But, and some of them they still, for naturalization, for instance, we have the naturalization index. However, we don't have the records themselves. So you can check to see if they exist at the courthouse while you're at the library. But then, so you can get a yes or no before you actually head down to the courthouse.
Yeah, no, I think those indexes are so valuable, and people shouldn't just use that as the answer either, so the index has the information just and will point you to where you can get that original document, which
Yes,
is
that's true.
yeah, the
Well, we
second part.
also, speaking of the indexes, all of this information, the marriage stuff, the obituaries, the newspapers, we also have that all indexed in a card file. In the days before the internet, people used to use this substance called cardstock. Um, I'm a little bit of a snob about the old ways of doing things. I'm still in favor of the old card files. But you can look up any name, see if there's an obit in our archives, if there's an obit on the microfilm. We have a whole bunch of all of this dating back as far as the records we have are all indexed, so you can just pop open the card file, look them up alphabetically, and see if there's an obit and what issue of the newspaper it'll be in. Then go grab the microfilm, view that, and look it up.
I'm so glad you brought up the card file, because I also have this, I won't call it an obsession, but definitely a deep appreciation of the card catalogs and
Yes.
the work that went into people, the volunteers over decades sometimes, that spent going through newspapers and writing down all those items
Yes.
to put in those card catalogs.
We're so busy racing forward with technology. I frequently think of Jeff Goldblum's line in Jurassic Park, where he says, "You were so busy trying to figure out if you could, you didn't stop to think if you should." That really applies to our use of technology these days. The card file, you know what? It can't be hacked. It won't catch a virus. It's not going to need to be updated to Cards 2.0 in a couple of years. There's a lot of advantages to doing it the old-fashioned way.
Mm-hmm.
It's not digital, but it's very convenient.
I totally agree. There's a church in Schuylkill County who lost all their records because they were put into a computer program. And after the person did that, they threw out the original books.
Oh, bad idea.
And
idea.
now they can't access any of that information. It's just, now it's effectively gone,
Yeah.
It's so sad.
Yeah,
And
I mean, there's a lot of reasons to avoid digitization. I realize it's the way of the future, but it's also far from the best way. We're not really making improvements here.
Say more about that, about not improving things by digitizing them. I can edit this part out. I just.
Well, it's like, I don't mind being quoted with this, okay?
Okay.
A lot of people will use things like Ancestry.com, Find a Grave, and so on. For example, I mean, I have written about a family that is kind of a mystery family. They were buried in Clinton County for a time, and now they're buried somewhere else. We don't know where. It's a mystery. I have some documents at the library in our archives that suggest they may have been secretly buried in Arlington. Now, every time I've written about this, I get somebody sending me a link to findagrave.com where they say, nope, this family is buried over in Huntington County. And yeah, there's a mention that they're there, but no photographs, no documents, no proof. Now, when you use a service like that, Ancestry, Find a Grave, something online like that, you're completely taking it on faith that somebody has done the research and that they know what they're talking about. That is
Mm.
not necessarily the case. I am
Hmm.
a big fan of documentation. If I write something, if I say something on a tour, I also give tours of the community. I can back it up. I can show you a document that proves it.
Hmm.
You know, I am not a fan of, well, this is the truth because this is what my great grandpappy told me. In the days before the internet, there was a lot of misinformation out there, and some of it was deliberate. It was real easy to make up a crap story to impress the grandkids.
Hmm.
So I'm a big fan of actually doing the research, digging out the documents, and learning this stuff the old-fashioned way.
Yeah. No, I've made this point, a similar point to people that the digitization and distribution of those documents on the internet is actually taking the profession of genealogy backwards rather than forwards.
Yes,
Because
agreed.
people have lost the context in which those documents were created, both the geographical and the time period, like both of those contexts. And they're trying to evaluate something without having anything else surrounding it. They just, like you
That's
said, take
true.
it on faith. What the
That's true.
yeah.
And, people also, a lot of people have lost any appreciation for how I suppose challenging this is supposed to be. They're used to the idea of, okay, I'm just going to type a name in here and the machine brings me everything. That's not the best or the most accurate way of doing it. You're supposed to be actually looking things up in the archives, looking at the newspapers and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yes, this is true.
You know,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, you see the TV shows. Reality TV isn't a big thing of mine either. You see the TV shows where celebrities are taken place to place,
Mm.
and they're looking into their family history. Except they're not actually, if you notice, doing anything. They drop them off, and then someone like me on the other end trots everything else and says, "Here's what we have." But you haven't seen anybody doing the actual work.
Right.
It gives people the idea it's supposed to be quick and easy. Genealogy is not fast food. You don't say what you need and people trot it out to you. Genealogy is labor intensive.
It really is, and I think people look at when people write up like narrative histories of ancestors, that it's not like they started at point A and they got to point Z, and it was just this clean research. I mean, when you're doing genealogy research, you're all over the place
Oh
sometimes.
yes. Oh yes, it can be chaotic.
Yeah, and
I use the fast food comparison a lot. People
yeah.
come in and they'll stroll in and they'll stand there at the desk and say things like, "Well, I need a picture of my house from 1917. Well, you want fries with that?" I mean, there's no guarantee anybody took a picture of the house at any point, let alone that specific year, or that they came in and donated it to the library.
Mm-hmm.
People are always saying, "Well, they must have." Well, have you? Have you donated a picture of your house so future people can find it? Well, gee, no. Funny you should ask. I haven't. It's not quick and easy. The best way to do it is to really get in there, get in the archives, dig through it.
Yes. Can you talk a little bit for people who aren't familiar with Clinton County? Let's say they're on Ancestry.com or Family Search and they pulled up the 1840 census, and I don't even know, was Clinton County counted in the 1840 census, or did they put it in another county?
To the best of my knowledge, it was in the 1840 census.
Okay, good. Okay.
Now, Clinton County itself was founded in 1839, June 21st, 1839. Okay. Now, I've had people who have been doing some online research, and they'll contact me and they'll say something like, "Well, it says he was born in Lock Haven in 1910. Well, no, he wasn't, because Lock Haven wasn't founded till 1833.
Mm.
I get that. And it may just be some sort of bad misinformation. It might also be they meant he was born in the area, which later became Lock Haven. Originally, this whole area, this whole central PA part of the state was Berks County. Then it became Northumberland. By the 1770s, it was Northumberland County. So during the whole Revolutionary War, it was Northumberland. 1795 and 1800, respectively, it was Center and Lycoming. The dividing line was fairly near Lock Haven. It cut across Flemington, PA, which is like the next town up, not far from where I live, actually. And that lasted, so pre-1839, between about 1800 and 1839, you're looking for records that will today be either in Center or Lycoming County, depending on what part of Clinton you were in. Then 1839, Jeremiah Church founded Clinton County. Now, amusing story there. Jerry Church was from New York. He was a traveler, and he called himself an adventurer. He founded Lock Haven in 1833 after coming here to visit his brother. Had no money to do it. Got an anonymous donor from Williamsport, Lycoming County, to pony up $20,000 so he could buy the land and sell it off. He then founded Clinton County, and let me tell you, there was no logical reason behind any of this. He founded Lock Haven simply because he loved the area. Then he founded Clinton County around it because he wanted to have the courthouse built next door to his house so he could sue his neighbors anytime he wanted. I'm not even paraphrasing there. That is exactly what he wrote in his journal, which is available both online and for purchase at the library. So he set about, in 1833, campaigning with the state government to create a new county. Originally, he planned to call it Eagle County. Twice a year, he would visit the state government and campaign for them to take part of Center and Lycoming and make it into a new county to be called Eagle. And they turned him down. It was indeed a crazy plan. So he brought his friend John Moorhead, who then did most of the talking in 39. They changed the name to reflect New York Governor DeWitt Clinton, who was a big force in the canals, and instead said, let's name it Clinton County. And the state government loved that, applauded, and voted it through unanimously without realizing it was the same property they'd been voting against for 6 years. That is how Clinton County was founded. I suspect there's a bit of craziness like this in a lot of the Pennsylvania states, which is why there's no rhyme or reason to most of
them. That's hysterical. I'm just laughing because I think that story is so perfect for early 1800s Pennsylvania, between how, right, how the man, what he called himself, sort of the wheeling and dealing, and, and how something could get done, and everyone then turned around and was like, how did that happen?
Yes. Yes. And, and I've got to say, Clinton County, even there's a little bit of weirdness even for the founding of a county. In general, when you see a county that was created from two other counties and you say, where's the dividing line? It'll be almost exactly across the center, because no one county wants to lose more of its tax base than any other.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll make it half and half. Clinton's not like that. It was about 75% Lycoming and 25% center. It's founded, even for a weird county, it's founded a little extra weird. There's a big chunk of Lycoming, which lost quite a bit, and a little chunk of center.
Yes, Pennsylvania carved out a lot of counties in the early part of the 1800s, and it's a constantly shifting landscape.
It's got a fascinating. We actually have a map hanging up at the Pennsylvania Room to kind of help people deal with that. This color-coded map, you may even have seen a copy, where it shows exactly when each county was founded and what it used to be. So you can kind of go year to year and go, okay, here is where, so you can figure all this out.
And is this the one from the Pennsylvania Historic and Museum Commission?
Yes.
Yes, yeah. They made it in...
Oh, you gotta love the PHMC. They make things as easy as they can.
I will link people in the show notes to the digital copy of this. I have it open on my desktop right now. Like I use this map
Ah,
all the time, the digital version, because I can zoom in and out. Um,
okay.
yeah. I have a paper version hanging in my home office, but the digital one I use all the time because to get myself oriented as to what county came from what other counties while I'm doing research, it's invaluable. It's
Yeah.
absolutely
Yeah.
invaluable.
Oh, yeah. You need something like that. You really do.
So, Lou, before we wind up, I wanted to give you the opportunity to share a memorable discovery or maybe a favorite one, because I think you get a lot of them in your position.
There are, and you know what? 5 minutes after we're done with this, I'll think of something else. But there's so many fascinating discoveries. I'm always stumbling on something. One of my most interesting ones was last year. We have this old story in Clinton County. There was a Declaration of Independence signed in present-day Clinton County. Okay, not the Declaration of Independence, but a Declaration of Independence. The same day, July 4th, 1776, a group of guys called the Fair Play Men were said to have gathered underneath an elm near the county border in Pine Creek Township. And they signed a Declaration of Independence that was actually sent to King George, except it turns out by the time they got it to Philadelphia, in a very Monty Python-like moment, they were told, "Oh, a Declaration of Independence? No, we already sent one of those." So, I just every time I hear this story, I think of Monty Python and the Holy Grail. You know, oh, he's already got one. You see, you've seen the movie.
Yes.
But I digress. Anyway, so they brought it back and they buried it somewhere on or near the grounds of the fort where they lived. It's never turned up, by the way. This is a big mystery that I am still to this day working on. I hope to find it one day. However, I made a fascinating discovery a year or so ago. It turns out the story about the tree isn't quite accurate. I discovered I could not find any mention of the tree known as the Tydoton elm or Pine Creek elm. It's known as, well, it died in the 70s, but the site has a big marker at it. You know, it's been declared this big historic landmark.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out that's not true. The story was made up about 1918. Not the signing of the document story, but the story about the tree.
Hmm.
At the time, they didn't know where the document was signed. And it turns out beforehand, there was a lot of debate about that, and a committee kind of coordinated to find where this thing was signed. Turns out, most likely, it was signed in a schoolhouse that no longer stands about a quarter mile from where the tree stood. A local man from Mecklehattan was in charge of this committee to find out where, and I saw his name and I thought, uh-oh. Because he was known to embellish stuff and to make stuff up, and it turns out that's likely what happened. I checked all the books, all the archives, pre-1918, when he was placed in charge of this committee. No mention of the tree. So I discovered one of our big local stories did not happen the way people thought it did. I was kind of fascinated with that. That was neat.
Yeah, that's really cool. That is, I do love the whole story too of, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It's just, it's a great story and how you can take what was told about it and then go back through the documentation and determine, you know, if it was, how much of it was true or whatever.
Yes.
It still
And
makes it.
Some of it I stumbled on by accident, but still, you know, fascinating discovery.
Yeah. And I think it speaks to like everyone wants to be significant. You know, they were trying to be in their signing a Declaration of Independence, maybe also taking a part in what was happening or I don't know.
Yes, they were. Yes, they were. They were called the Fair Play Men, and they set up their own sort of a temporary government to kind of settle disputes among the local farmers. Later, some 20 years after the American government in 1776, the one that we now know, after that was established, they reviewed the decisions of the Fair Play Men and let them all stand. These guys did a pretty good job.
Oh, interesting. Well, that would make sense. I mean, because they were so far away from any, probably any sort of courthouse or,
Yeah,
um,
exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. You'd have to go clear to Sunbury at that time.
yeah,
Remember, at the time, this was Northumberland County.
right, right. Oh, that's fascinating. Lou, I wanted to thank you for being on the podcast, telling us about Clinton County and the absolutely wonderful resources that you have there. So, if people have traced ancestors to Clinton County, or maybe even one of the surrounding counties, Center County, Lycoming, Clearfield, to check out the Ross Library and see what you guys have in
Oh,
your
yes.
historical collection.
You can reach us, rosslibrary.org, or give us a call, 570-748-3321.
All right, perfect. And if they're from out of state, they can contact the library and get some help.
We will do this research for a fee, yes. We'll look up obituaries and so on.
Oh, perfect. So they shouldn't hesitate to contact you because...
Oh, no, feel free. Call and ask for me.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, thank you, Lou, again, for being on the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
I want to thank Lou once again for sharing all that wonderful history of Clinton County and his experience in helping people research their ancestors. It was a super fun episode, and I know I learned a lot and can't wait to get up there to do some research myself for my ancestors that were in Clearfield County, just right next door. This is Denise Allen. Thanks for listening, and join me next week for another county featured on the podcast.